Good day, everyone. Welcome to week 3. I hope your quarter is going well so far. Welcome to our second week of discussing Greek participles. And I hope you all had a fairly good intro to these participles. I hope everything is going well and that you're able to get some understanding of these. But yeah, let's have a look at this. I am assuming if you are here watching this, that you were able to look at the forms in part 1, and that you're pretty familiar with those. All right, we are going to be talking now about how to use these, but a lot of this discussion is going to assume that you are very familiar with how these participles work. So yeah, let's get into this. So here is talking about 3 ways that a participle is used. Now, if you remember from part 1, this chapter is entitled Verbal Adjectives, and therefore the 3 ways that a participle is used are very similar to the way that adjectives are used. Okay, first of all, we have the participle can be used exactly like an adjective. Right? This is called the attributive participle. And this usage describes or attributes a quality to a noun or pronoun or anything else, okay? Any other substantive sort of naming word, okay? And the participle can be used to assign a quality to that word. All right, the second thing there, the participle can be used as a noun. Like the adjective, this can stand in the place of a noun. Okay, so the participle can kind of stand by itself, and then it can be used like a noun. It can be the subject or object of a verb. It can be used in a prepositional phrase. Okay. Then as an adverb, or in other words, a dependent clause verb. Okay, a lot of times the adverbial participle is best translated as the verb of what is called a dependent clause. Okay, a dependent clause is a part of a sentence that functions a lot like a sentence, but it cannot stand by itself. Okay, and we'll look at some of those. In relation to the participle actually tells how or when an action happened in relation to the main verb. Okay, there will be a main verb in the sentence. Every sentence requires a main verb that has person and number. A participle cannot be the main verb, okay, because the participle does not have person and number. It is not going to be taking like a subject like in a regular sentence. Okay. But as a dependent clause verb, it can show you how that action in the dependent clause is related to the main verb action. Okay, and we'll take a closer look at that. Now, if you need to review what attributive, predicate, and substantive mean, all right, how that is formed, what an attributive clause is, what a predicate clause is, you'll have to go back to chapter 6, the discussion of adjectives. Okay, and that chapter will give you those 3 uses of an adjective, and you'll want to be very familiar with those as we proceed in this. All right. So the first use of the participle is called the attributive participle. It is found in the attributive position, okay, in reference to its corresponding noun. And when I say corresponding noun, I mean that the participle, the noun, and the definite article will all be in the same case, gender, and number. Okay. If one of those is off, if one of them is different, case, gender, or number, then these 2 elements are not related to each other. Okay, and you do not have an attributive participle. Now, in the attributive position, what that means is the participle is going to come in between that article-noun group. Okay, the definite article, if there is one, there doesn't need to be one, but normally there is. Okay, the definite article, the participle, and the noun will all be with the same case, gender, and number. Okay, and in that case, the participle will be standing in between its article-noun grouping. or it will be connected to that article noun group with a second identical definite article. Okay, look at the first example below, the Greek example here. I've got the participle underlined, and you can see in that first example, ha legon anthropos. All right, you see that. Notice that the participle, which is underlined, is in between the definite article ha and that noun anthropos. Okay, and so this is an example of the attributive position. Therefore, this is an attributive participle. There is a second way of forming the attributive participle that I've noted. You can have the article noun, and then normally if the participle is outside of that, this is not attributive. Okay, but if you have a second identical definite article connecting the participle with the article noun group, now you still have an attributive participle. Look at the second example there. Ha anthropos is the article noun group, and then you have that second ha, that second definite article that's joined to the participle. And this entire phrase is the same case gender number. Okay, it's a nominative, masculine singular. Okay, that participle has that weird omega nu ending, but it is still a nominative masculine singular, and you'll want to review part 1 if you have any questions on that. All right, so both of these constructions are attributive constructions, an example of the attributive participle. And both are translated, the speaking or the saying person is one way to translate that. Both of these, okay, could be translated the speaking person. Or probably a better way to translate it in most sentences would be the person who is speaking. Okay, that legon is the speaking. It's a participle form of lego. Okay, I speak. And therefore, when we are attributing something, you're telling us the person, well, which person? It's the speaking person, or the person who is speaking. All right, moving on now to the substantive participle. Okay. Your substantive participle will usually, and I notice that I've underlined usually have an associated definite article. And again, associated means that the article is agreeing with the participle in case, gender, and number. Okay. What is the difference between the attributive and the substantive participle? Okay, they're used pretty much the same way, but with the substantive participle, there is no corresponding noun that agrees in case, gender, number. Okay, you will only have an article, usually have the article and the participle. And if you see that construction, then start to think that this is a substantive participle. Okay, and in this case, the participle will stand in for that noun. Okay, and the way that you get what the noun is based on the gender and number of the article and the participle. Okay, I've given you an example here, a couple of examples actually. The first one, ha legon. Notice that both of these, again, are nominative, masculine, and singular. And I've noted that there with the red. Okay, because that is a definite article and a participle, and they both agree in those three categories. You can understand, okay, this is nowhere in the Greek, and so I've put it in the brackets in the translation there, but you can understand that this means the man. Okay, because it's masculine singular, you can just kind of put in there the man. And it's translated very similarly to the attributive participle. Okay, the man, now participle element, who is speaking. Okay, so here we have the participle, and it is standing in for a noun. All right, if there is no noun that we have been discussing before that is masculine and singular, you can just put in the man. Otherwise, if there is a previous noun that has been discussed that is masculine and singular, you can stick that in there too. Okay. I can't think of anything. Why don't we use the disciple? Okay, I was going to say the rock, but the rock which is speaking doesn't really work. Okay. Let's use the disciple. Okay. The disciple is masculine singular, and so if in the passage we are talking about the disciple or a disciple, and you have halagon there in another sentence that does not state the disciple, you can put the disciple in there. Okay, you can understand that because it's masculine singular. All right, going to the next example there, hai legusai. Again, if this is not familiar to you, go back to section 1, or the first part of this chapter, chapter 20 in the textbook, and become familiar with these forms. All right, hai legusai. Both of these are feminine now. They are plural and they're nominative. And so that's been noted there in the red. Okay, feminine, plural, and then nominative. In this case, nominative is not super important to the substantive participle, but I've put it there anyway. And now, because this is feminine plural, you can understand in the brackets the women. And again, because it's legusai, the participle form of lego, now we can translate it, the women who are speaking. Again, very similar to the attributive participle in translation. All right, let's move on then. All right, this next portion here, I will be putting up several slides in succession that will kind of build on each other and show you the translation of each of these phrases and how we get there. All right, we've just finished talking about attributive and substantive participles. Now, all of my examples have been nominative case, but these attributive and substantive participles can appear in any case. Okay, and I've noted here, they have the usual case usage. Okay, nominative is going to be the subject, genitive, possession, etc. Okay, so let's take a look at these sentences here. These are all complete sentences. So they'll show you an example of how these cases are used. That first one there, ha legon anthropos blepe ton kurion. I've underlined ha legon anthropos because that is the participle phrase. Now, of those two there, attributive and substantive that we just talked about, which use is this? Or which construction is this? Is this attributive or substantive? Ha legon anthropos. Okay. If you said it was attributive, you are correct. Notice that the participle there is legon, and it is in between the article and the noun, ha anthropos. All right. Also note that this is a nominative case, so that is going to be the subject. As I said before, the attributive participle attributes something to the noun, and so the way that you translate this phrase is the person or the man who is speaking. The entire sentence then would be the person who is speaking blepe ton kurion. Okay, blepe is to see, so the person who is speaking sees, and then ton kurion is in the attributive case. That gives you the object of the seeing. So the person who is speaking, all right, the person who is speaking sees the Lord. All right, let's look at the second sentence there now. Ha kurios lege to anthropo to esthionti. All right, in this case, the participle phrase is to anthropo to esthionti. And notice that this is in the dative case. To anthropo will tell you that's dative. And then the participle form, it's a little bit harder, but it is also dative. It's the dative singular, active, from estheo, meaning I eat. All right. So first of all, we need to figure out, is this attributive or substantive? Those are your two choices that I've given you here. And if you said that it was attributive, you are correct. All right, this is the second example of the attributive adjective, where you have the article and the noun, but then an article, which is the exact same as the first one, kind of joins that participle to the article-noun group. All right, so the translation of this, estheonti, again, is from I eat. So the person or the man who is eating is the participle phrase. But note this is a dative now. All right, so this is a dative case. So dative is translated often to, by, or for. All right, so your main part of the sentence there, ha kurias lege, the Lord speaks, the Lord is speaking. The Lord speaks to the person who is eating. The to comes from the fact that to anthropo to estheonti is dative. All right, so that entire phrase tells you who the Lord is speaking to. All right, third example here. Hai legusai blepusi ton kurion. All right, main sentence there is blepusi ton kurion. If you remember, blepo is I see. And that is third person plural. So they see, or they are seeing, ton kurion, the Lord. And hai legusai is nominative. So this is going to tell you who is seeing the Lord. Now, is this attributive or substantive? Hai legusai. You will see there is no other nominative in this sentence, so it is simply hai legusai as the participle phrase, which makes it then attributive or substantive. It is substantive. All right. Article, participle, no accompanying noun. And so who is doing the seeing? Okay, the women, understood from the participle because it is feminine plural. You can put in the women who are speaking, legusai, and they are the ones who see the Lord. Okay. And then the last sentence there, lambanusi ta therapiuanta. Okay. Lambanusi, third person plural, they take or they receive. And then what is ta therapiuanta? Okay, first of all, let's figure out whether it is attributive or substantive. All right, and in this case, this is a substantive participle. Notice that it is neuter plural here. Because it is neuter, it could be nominative or accusative. And therapiuanta also is neuter, nominative, or accusative. All right, no corresponding noun there, therefore it is substantive. So how are we going to translate this? Well, the fact that it is neuter actually adds a complexity here. Ta therapiuanta could be a nominative. Therefore, it could be the subject of lambanusi. Or it could also be an accusative, which would make it the object of lambanusi. Okay. They receive the things that heal. Okay. This way I've translated this as an accusative. Okay. You see it is neuter plural, so you can put in the things. And then therapiuanta, from therapeuo, that the healing. So they receive the things that heal, or that are healing. You can also translate this as a nominative, which would get a little bit trickier, but grammatically it would be correct. You could say the things that heal receive. Again, not as nice of a sentence. That receiving kind of demands an object. But again, grammatically, that would be correct. So you'd have to try both of those. I very much prefer the top one there. They receive the things that heal. All right, so have a look at this slide, all of these sentences there, and make sure that you know how we got from the Greek to the English, and especially be able to recognize whether that participle phrase is attributive or substantive. All right, if you're ready to move on, let's go then to the third category of these participles. All right. Here we have the adverbial participle. The adverbial participle is what I was talking about before. It is often translated as the dependent clause verb. Okay. These are very obvious. Okay, they are found first of all in the predicate position. So if you remember from chapter 6, predicate position means that it is sitting outside of the article-noun grouping. However, notice here, it still agrees with the article and noun in case, gender, and number. Okay, so it'll be sitting outside of that grouping. Sometimes there will be several words in between the participle and the article-noun group. But that participle will still agree with the article and noun in case, gender, and number. So you know that they're still related, even if they're in very different parts of the sentence. Now, one thing to note when we are translating these adverbial participles, the tense of the participle becomes very important. So I've put here, take notice of the tense of the participle. Why is that important? Okay, if it is present tense, you are going to translate the word. This is not going to be found at all in the Greek, but you're going to translate the word while or when plus that participle. Okay. I've just put blank ing as the participle. Whatever verb that is goes in the blank. Now, if it is aorist, translate. A couple of ways you can do this. Either having and then that sort of past participle form, ed on the end, is the sort of regular form. Or you could also say after. Okay, so having or after with the aorist, while or when with the present. All right. Perfect participles are translated in a way that is very similar to the aorist participle. Okay. If you see one of those, just take note in your head. Perfect tense means that something has happened, something is completed, but it has that idea of the present effect still continuing. On this slide, I've taken note that the adverbial participles usually appear only in the nominative. There is one major exception to this, but I will discuss that later after looking at these sentences with you. All right, each of these sentences contains an adverbial participle. Let's have a look at the first one there. Legon ha anthropos blepe ton kurion. First of all, notice that the main sentence here is ha anthropos blepe ton kurion. Okay, the person or the man sees the Lord. All right, now have a look at the participle. Legon. It is associated with ha anthropos because the entire phrase is masculine, nominative singular. But legon is outside of that article-noun grouping, okay? The article-noun being ha anthropos. And legon is before it. There is no second article to pull it in. So in this case, it is in the predicate position, and we have an adverbial participle. The next thing that we have to look at is the tense of this legon. If you said that it was a present participle, you are correct. And then how do we translate that? Present participle is translated while or when. So let's go with something like while speaking. Okay, from Lego. While speaking, then, the person sees the Lord. Notice there are two verbal ideas here. Okay, speaking and seeing. The person is doing both of them. And how do we know the relationship between these two verbs? Okay, one is coming first and one is coming second. Well, they're both happening actually at the same time because you have a present participle that tells you that the speaking and the seeing is happening pretty much at the same time. Okay. While speaking, the person sees the Lord. And you know it is while, you know it's happening at the same time because of the present participle. Moving on to the second sentence now. Akusasai haigunaikes blepusitan dulon. The main sentence here is haigunaikes blepusitan dulon. Haigunaikes, that is a third declension noun found in chapter 17. And this is a nominative plural. If you need to review the form, go back to chapter 17. You notice this is from the word gune, which is woman or wife. It has the stem change that is typical of the third declension noun, and then you have the nominative plural third declension ending there. So haigunaikes, the women or the wives, probably best in the sentence translated the women. Blepusi tandulon, the women see the servant or the slave. All right, that's your main sentence. Now I'll have a look at the article in the participle. Participle, again, is an adverbial participle. It comes outside of the article-noun grouping. And then we need to look at the tense of this. Okay, the tense can be present, aorist, or perfect. All right, and in this case, of course, this is an aorist tense participle. Notice the sigma at the end of the stem. That sigma right in the middle of the word there is coming at the end of the stem, akuo. And then you have the alpha after the sigma, also can tell you that it is a first aorist. All right, so your main sentence, the women see the servant. Now, what about the akuo, the hearing? Okay, because it is aorist, we're going to translate after or having. And so let's do after here. All right, after hearing, the women see the servant. Okay, the women are doing both the seeing and the hearing. The seeing is taking place. Notice you have an aorist participle, but a present main verb. Okay, so this entire sentence is happening in the present. The seeing is your main verb. So you have the present tense see, but the hearing tells you that the hearing came first. Okay, the women first heard, and then now they are seeing. Okay, after hearing, the women see the servant. Let's go on to the third sentence now. Epon tauta hadulas lege to curio. Right, this is an example of a sentence where I said before the adverbial participle is going to be in the predicate position, which means the participle happens outside of the article-noun grouping. But it doesn't always happen right before or right after. Okay, there is this word tauta there, which is in between the participle and the article-noun group. It doesn't matter, the participle is still sitting outside of that. Therefore, the participle is an adverbial participle. But the tauta is going to go with the apon. Okay, it's going to be the object of that participle, and we'll see how that works. But first of all, let's look at your main sentence there. Hadulas lege to curio. Hadulas is the nominative. It is a nominative singular, the servant or the slave. What is the servant doing? Okay, lege, the servant speaks. And then to curio, this is a dative, so translate to the Lord. The servant speaks to the Lord is your main sentence. All right, now let's deal with the participle. Apone is your participle. It is associated with hod doulos, and we said before that makes it adverbial. But what is the what's the tense of this? Right? Is it present, aorist, or perfect? Note the ending. That looks like a present tense ending, but the changed stem there tells you that this is not a present, even though the ending looks like a present. The changed stem tells us that it is a second aorist. And actually, the participle form there is the exact same verb as the main verb. Just the main verb is in the present tense, lego, from Lego, and the participle is in the aorist. Okay, this is a nasty stem change. There, lego becomes apon in the aorist. So your changed stem plus the present tense ending gives you a second aorist participle. As we said before, aorist participles are translated either after or having. In this case, let's go with having. Okay, so apone, having said, and then tauta. All right, tauta is a neuter plural from this or these. In this case, it is a neuter plural, so we're going to translate it these. And then the things there in the brackets is assumed because it is neuter plural. Okay, so the participle phrase there, having said these things, and then there you have your main sentence there that we translated before, the servant speaks to the Lord. All right, the last sentence now, menusai, hi agathai, blepusi ton kurion. Main sentence again, hi agathai, blepusi ton kurion. Okay, agathos is from an adjective from chapter 6. Agathos is good. In this case, there is no associated noun with this. Therefore, hi agathai is a substantive adjective, and you can put in something like the women, which means the good women. Okay, so the good women, blepusi ton kurion, good women see the Lord. Now let's go to the participle. Menusai. All right, what verb is this from? This is from the verb meno, which is in the vocab for chapter 19, the very previous chapter. All right, it means to abide or to remain or to wait. And let's take a look at the participle there. What tense is this participle? Menusai, if it is from meno. All right, it is just a present participle. It is a present feminine plural. Nominative. It is associated with hi agathai. Because it's present, we're going to translate while or when. And let's go, while waiting, the good women see the Lord. All right, any questions on these? You can go back to the beginning slide and work through these with me again. Otherwise, we can go on. Yeah, again, at the top of this slide, I said adverbial participles usually appear only in the nominative. Let's talk about that big exception. Okay, genitive absolute is a participle construction, and it falls under the heading, kind of the big heading of the adverbial participle. All right, so the genitive absolute, it is adverbial. It's going to work the exact same way as the adverbial participle with one huge exception. Okay, instead of appearing in the nominative case and being associated with the subject of your main verb, when you have a genitive absolute construction, these are very easy to recognize because you will have a participle that appears in the genitive and then an accompanying noun or pronoun that will also be in the genitive case. All right, this entire genitive participle phrase will not be associated with any other part of the sentence, which is why it's called absolute. Okay, it kind of stands out there by itself, not really interacting with any other part of the sentence. All right, so it's very easy to recognize, but once you've recognized that you have a genitive absolute, how are you going to translate it? Well, you're going to translate this participle the same way that you do an adverbial participle. That's why I'm saying think of it as a subset of the adverbial participle. All right, if you have a present participle, translate while or when, aorist, having, or after. And then here's the big difference, okay? When you have a genitive absolute, your participle, first of all, you're going to translate it depending on the tense, but then that noun or pronoun in the genitive is going to work as the subject of the participle that appears in the genitive. Okay, weirdness, right? Subjects are supposed to be nominative. Well, except when we have a genitive absolute, okay? Your genitive noun or pronoun is going to become the subject of this genitive participle. Here's an example sentence. Legonton matheton tauta hakurios ex erkomai. All right, look at that participle, legonton. You know that this is genitive because it has that little middle section there. That is what distinguishes this from a nominative participle. The nominative would be legon. The genitive is legonton. And then your matheton there is your noun that's in the genitive. Okay, again, very easy to recognize. The genitive ending there is omega nu, and so you can definitely see that those are both genitive. All right, the genitive is not associated with anything else in the sentence, and so you have a genitive absolute here. Look at legonton. The tense of that is present tense, so we're going to translate while. So while saying, but then you have this matheton, okay, and we're going to translate that noun as the subject of this participle. Okay, so while the disciples say, notice before, this is new, okay? The adverbial participle would just be while saying, okay? Here with the genitive absolute, we're going to translate that genitive matheton as the subject. So while the disciples are saying, or while the disciples say, what are they saying? They're saying tauta, these things. Then your main sentence, we finally get to the main sentence, hakurios ex erkomai, the Lord goes out. Okay. Full sentence again, while the disciples say, or while the disciples are saying these things, the Lord goes out. Genitive absolute. What is the difference between the genitive absolute and just a regular adverbial participle? Okay, the genitive absolute is used, or we see it, when you have a different subject performing the action in the participle from the subject of the main verb. Okay, you're going to have two verbal ideas here, the main verb idea and the participle idea. If you have a regular adverbial participle, the same subject does both of those. All right, the genitive absolute is when you want a different subject to be performing the participle action from the main verb action. Okay, now we have two subjects rather than just one. The regular subject, it's the same subject. We only have one subject. All right, have a look at this sentence here. Epon tauta hamathetes eilthen. Okay, I've put here, this is a regular adverbial participle. Your main sentence there, hamathetes eilthen. Okay, so the disciple went. That's your main sentence. Now with the regular adverbial participle, you have epon, which agrees with hamathetes. This is a nominative masculine singular. Therefore, you have a regular adverbial participle. After saying these things, the disciple went. Another way to say this is, after the disciple said these things, the disciple went. Okay, the disciple is both saying and going. If you wanted to make it super clear, you could put the disciple on both of them, but you don't need to, and normally we don't. It's kind of understood. After saying these things, the disciple went. The disciple is doing both the saying and the going. Here we have a genitive absolute, eponton matheton tauta hoi hamartoloi elthen. You'll notice that this is genitive. Okay, it's very easy to recognize, again, that the genitive participle eponton, notice how it is different than the nominative participle in the previous example. Okay, you have that sort of joining part there, the omicron nu tau, to make it genitive. Alright, you still have that omega nu ending, but the longer stem change makes it genitive. Okay, a ponton, and then the matheton is also genitive plural, that omega nu. So that part is very easy to recognize. It is not associated with anything else in the sentence, so therefore that it makes it a genitive absolute phrase. The tauta is also in there. And then the main sentence is hoi hamartoloi eilthen. Okay, the sinners left. Okay, or the sinners went. Now let's go to the genitive absolute. Okay, again, it has the stem change, so therefore it is still an aorist. So we're going to translate after. But now you have that matheton. That is also in the genitive, and so before I said you're going to use that as the subject of the participle in the genitive, so it's after the disciples said these things, and then your main sentence, the sinners left. Alright, here we see that the genitive absolute is again used when you want to have a different subject doing the participle action, the saying, as the main verb action, the going. Okay. In the first sentence, the disciple did both the saying and the going. In this sentence here with the genitive absolute, the disciples are doing the saying, but the sinners now are doing the going. Alright, there we have that genitive absolute. So after the disciples said these things, the disciples is the subject of that in the genitive, and then the sinners left. Okay, or the sinners went. Alright, one last thing here about participles and translating them. I have here something very important to remember is that you do not get time from the participle's tense. Alright, the tense only indicates the relationship of the participle action to the action of the main verb. Alright, the tense as far as time only comes from the main verb. Okay, only the main verb will tell you whether the sentence is happening in the past or the present or future or anything else. Alright, you don't even have a future participle. Okay, the tense instead indicates a relationship of that action in the participle to the action of the main verb. Now what does that mean? Okay, here we have the present participle. If we have a present tense participle, that means that the participle action is happening at the same time as the main verb. Alright, the aorist participle, as we saw before in all of those examples, the aorist participle indicates that the participle action is happening before that of the main verb, which is why you always translate it after or having. Okay. That thing happened first, the participle happened first, then after, then the main verb happened. Now I have here usually, the present participle will mean continuous or repeated action. Okay, usually, not always. The context will tell you for sure. But if your writer is a careful writer, that's what it will indicate. Okay, so the present participle indicates, first of all, that the action of the participle is happening at the same time as the action of the main verb. The second thing that you can get from the present participle is that the participle action is something that has happened continuously or repeatedly. Now, in contrast, okay, the aorist participle, first of all, the aorist means that the action is happening before that of the main verb. But it also means that we are taking sort of that snapshot idea. Okay, it's just capturing like a point in time rather than something that's happening continuously. And then the perfect participle just means, again, yeah, action that is completed but has effects into the present. Okay, those are the things to remember with participle tense. All right, now when we're moving outside of the indicative mood, now we're moving to the participle. The participle does not give you time. It only gives you the relationship of that participle action to that in the main verb. And I believe this is my last slide, these 4 examples. And so I've given you some combinations here. Okay, again, the participle relates that action to that of the main verb. So let's take a look at these 4 scenarios that can present themselves. First one, okay, present participle along with a present main verb. Okay, that means this entire thing is happening in the present as far as time goes. And then the participle is happening at the same time as the main verb. And here we have legon tauta, hakurios erketai. Okay, the main sentence there, hakurios erketai, the Lord goes, or the Lord is going. And then the participle phrase there, okay? The legon is happening at the same time as the erketai. Okay, the saying is happening at the same time as the going. So here you have while he is saying these things, or you can even just say while saying these things, the Lord goes. Okay, present time because of the present tense main verb, and the saying or the speaking is happening at the same time as the going. Now have a look at the second example there. All right, here you have a present participle, but it is combined with an aorist main verb. Okay, how on earth do we do this? Okay, so now we have the entire action is happening in the past tense, right? Because the main verb is aorist. So the time we are speaking about is past. But then you have the participle is in the present, which means that participle action is happening at the same time as the main verb. In other words, the participle action is happening also in the past. So be careful here. Okay. Even though the participle tense is called present, the action is still happening in the past because the main verb is a past tense. It's an aorist. Okay. So when we're translating this now, you have to keep this in mind, all right? The participle action, even though it's a present tense participle, is happening in the past, so we're going to translate it then while, present tense, again, participle, this is happening at the same time as the main verb, while he was saying these things. Okay, you have to translate that present tense participle as a past tense anyway. Okay, because again, main verb is past, participle has to be past. While he was saying, past tense, these things, the Lord went. Okay, past tense. So this is a reason why we don't have, for example, an imperfect participle. All right, here you have an imperfect action, all right, past tense thing that's happening continuously, but the way that you express that, or the way that the New Testament writers express that, thankfully we don't have to think about writing this, okay, but the way that the New Testament writers express this would be with a past tense main verb combined with a present participle. Okay, while he was saying these things, the Lord went. All right, then these last two examples are a bit simpler. Here we have an aorist participle with a present tense main verb. And what that simply means is the main action is happening in the present, and the participle action happens before that present tense action. Okay. Apone tauta, again, there's that stem change that makes it aorist, apone. And what you have here, having said these things, the saying happens first, then the Lord goes. Present tense. All right, so that one, the whole sentence is happening in the present. Before this happened, the Lord spoke. Okay. So having said these things, the Lord goes. All right, and then the last example there, aorist participle plus aorist main verb. The entire sentence, the entire action here is happening in the past. And then before that past tense action happened, the participle action happened. Okay? So, apon tauta ha kurios elthen, having said these things, the Lord went. Okay, past tense sentence, the Lord went, and then before the Lord went, he also said something, or some things. All right, that concludes this section here. The second part of the participles. I think I might put up another lesson here shortly with just a bunch of examples. Okay, the best way to learn how to do these participle translations is just to go over a lot of examples. And so I'll just put a bunch of sentences up, go through these. There is a lot to think about, as you can tell here. Okay, so first thing you need to do, you need to figure out the tense of that participle. Okay. You also need to figure out how it's being used, whether it is an attributive participle, a substantive participle, or an adverbial participle. Okay. Once you get those two things, the tense and how the participle is being used, then you can go ahead and translate it. To get how you translate it, again, have a look at this lesson. I'll put up the timestamps so you can go through all of these, whether we're dealing with an attributive participle, a substantive participle, or an adverbial participle, and then what to do when you figure out what kind of participle it is. All right, a lot to think about. But yeah, go through this lesson maybe a couple of times, get the high points of it. Look at your quizzes to see how you're doing and how you're getting this. All right, but yeah, again, a lot to take in, a lot to keep in mind, and we'll go over this. I'll put up some more examples, and we'll get through this. Okay, but yeah, just take this bit by bit. Try not to get overwhelmed, and yeah, you can do this. All right, everyone, thank you for listening in on this. Again, I hope that all of your classes are going well, and yeah, I'll get those things sent out, and you can see how you're doing.